Hello students, in our previous lectures we have covered about the various aspects of the digestive system, starting from the mouth where the mastication of food takes place, and from there the food will pass through the esophagus by the peristaltic action, and it is passed through the cardiac splinter to enter into the stomach. From the stomach, through the pyrolic splinter, it will enter into the duodenum, which is the initial part of the small intestine, and then into the ileum, jejunum, and then it has to enter into the large intestine. Okay. So what we will be covering today is particularly with the aspects of the large intestine. Okay. So there is the ascending loop, transverse loop, descending loop, and it has to come out through the anus. How the assimilation of food take place and what are the various functions of the liver. Okay, so we will be covering all of this in today's class. So let's start with the large intestine. The large intestine is about 1.5 meters long and it has three parts. That is the caecum, 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 colon, and rectum. Okay, the caecum is a small blind pouch that is situated at the junction of the small intestine, and it enters into a narrow worm like tube which is known as the vermiform appendix. Okay, vermiform appendix. So the inflammation of this particular organ, that is the vermiform appendix, leads to appendicitis, which is a painful medical issue. It is also considered to be a vestigial organ. Vestigial organ means something that is found in the earlier species in the evolution. Okay, for them it was a functional, but now it is not functional. It doesn't have any specific recognizable function. Okay, and such an organ is known as the vestigial organ. Okay, in the evolution, for example monkeys and earlier ones, it will be having some function, but now in humans it is functionless. It is known as vestigial organ, vermiform appendix. The much longer part of the large intestine is the colon. It is much broader and it is about a meter long. So it will be going like in this kind of a question mark form, right? From the small intestine and all, it will entering into. So this one is known as the ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon. Okay, okay, and this last portion is known as the rectum. Okay, so the rectum is about 15 centimeters and long, and it opens into the anus. The anus is nothing but a circular muscle sphincter, okay, that allows the bowels to pass out. Okay, other than that it has to be remain shut. So what are the functions of the large intestine? Large intestine, they do not secrete any enzymes. Mainly they are involved in the absorption of the excess water that is present before the defecation takes place. Okay, so generally the feces would be composed about 75% of water and 25% of the solids, in which out of the 25% solids, 30% would be the roughage, that is the undigested mass, okay, which is the fiber, what we say the fiber, okay. The fiber is also essential for digestion. It allows the bowel movement to take place, okay, smooth bowel movement to take place. So around 10 to 20% fat, 2 to 3% protein, and 30% of the dead bacterial biomass, okay. So a lot of bacterial biomass is also involved during the digestion process. Now we move on to the next aspect, that is the assimilation of the food. Okay, assimilation of food, that means how is these nutrients absorbed into the body. So we are starting with more of the complex nutrients, and this has to be broken down into simpler forms, that is called digestion, and these simpler forms can be absorbed by the cells, they can pass through the membranes. So in the case of the simple sugars, okay, for example glucose, what will happen, that will be absorbed in the small intestine and it will enter into the hepatic portal vein. Hepatic portal vein, it is a vein, right? So hepatic portal vein, through this the most of the excess glucose will enter into the circulation and it will reach the hepatic, means liver. So what the liver will do, the liver will convert the excess glucose into glycogen. Okay, so the conversion of the excess glucose to glycogen is known as the glycogenesis. Okay, so you can break it down, that is the glycogen is there, right? Glycogen genesis, that is the making of glycogen, the process of making glycogen. From where? From glucose. Okay, so because glucose is like single molecules, okay, C6H12O6, single molecules, what will happen in the liver is that these individual glucose molecules will be covalently bonded to form the long chains like this, okay. These long chains are nothing but the glycogen molecules. Why the body is doing this? You see, when there are a large number of glucose molecules, that will lead to the increase in the osmotic pressure, correct? If there is more osmotic pressure, what is going to happen? Suppose this is a cell, okay, and outside there are a lot of high salt is there or high sugar is there, then it will lead to the plasmolysis. So what will happen, the cell is going to shrink, okay, all its contents will go outside. So that is what we say the plasmolysis will take place. So how to prevent this one? So instead of allowing the individual lot of glucose molecules, if you chemically link them, that will become one molecule, okay. And osmotic pressure, all of these are what? These all depend upon the number of molecules. It depends upon the number of molecules. Okay, so this is the glycogenesis. Okay, glycogenesis. What about the reverse? Glycogenolysis. Okay, glycogenolysis. So glycogen, okay, glycogen lysis, that is the glycogen will be broken down into simple glucose molecules. So now you know when what is required. When the person is short of the glucose, he needs a lot of energy, okay, then food availability is less. At that time, whatever the glycogen is stored, that will be broken down by the process of glycogenolysis into glucose. Okay, and when there is more glucose available, the body don't want to waste this precious glucose. So what it will do, it will convert that glucose into glycogen and it will store it, so that whenever there is a requirement in the future, that can be used. Okay, so these are the two very important kind of processes that are involved during the assimilation of food, okay, with respect to the sugars. Next, we will be looking about the assimilation of the amino acids. Amino acids. So what are these amino acids? You know that the amino acids are the building blocks of the proteins. Okay, they are the building block of the proteins. Now the amino acids, they cannot be stored. Okay, so whatever these excess amino acids are there, they need to be broken down by the liver by a process known as the deamination. Okay, deamination, that is the removal of the amino group. So when we say amino acid, that means there is a amino group and there is a acid group. Okay, for example, this is a very simple amino acid, glycine. Okay, so it will have one amino group, one carboxylic group. All the amino acids are going to have amino group, carboxylic group, okay, which is a general formula. So when you say deamination, that means the amino group will be removed. Okay, and that will be converted into the urea. Okay, now this urea is excreted via the urine. Okay, and whatever this remaining part of the structure is there, okay, this 2 carbon, that can be utilized further for the making glucose, okay, within the body. So you know that the human urine, whatever this nitrogen is there, that is excreted in the form of urea, not in the form of ammonia. Okay, in the form of urea. So that is why when the urine remains outside for a long time, the bacteria will convert the urine into ammonia, and the ammonia is a very smelly kind of gas. Okay, that is what we feel that, oh my god, it is so much smelly. So that is the, but urea itself is not like that. Okay, so next, how does the absorption of the fatty acids and glycerol take place? Fatty acids and glycerol, so they are mainly absorbed by the gut, okay, and transported through the intestinal villi and the lymphatic system. So you remember that villi are the structures that are present in the small intestine, and also there are the lymphatic vessels that are present in the inside the villi, which is known as the lacteals. So whatever these fats are there, mainly they are going to enter into this lymphatic system. Okay, lymphatic system, you know very well, is important for the maintenance of the immune response. Lymphocytes are present in that one. The thoracic duct of the lymphatic system empties into the large veins carrying the blood to the heart. Some fats are used in the synthesis of certain compounds in the body cells. The excess quantity is deposited chiefly below the skin, as well as the subcutaneous fat, and also some certain visceral organs in the small amounts. So you know very well that these fatty acids or fats, they will get deposited under the skin, that is the subcutaneous. Okay, giving the some people a nice hefty and bulky kind of fatty deposit. Okay, so that is how the fat is getting assimilated. Next, we move into the very important metabolic organ of the body, which is the liver. Liver is the largest gland of the body. Okay, liver is the largest gland, and it is one of the most important metabolic centers of the body. Average adult person The weight of the liver would be around 1.5 kgs, reddish brown in color, and it is located in the upper right side of the abdomen, just below the diaphragm. Okay, so if the diaphragm is like this, okay, the lungs are there, the top, okay, then here you will find the liver. Okay, this part is liver. So from here the stomach will come and all, okay, will go into down. So this part is the liver. So what are the various functions of the liver? Though it is not part of your syllabus, but it is important to know that the liver is going to control the blood sugar. Okay, we have discussed earlier the balance between glucose and glycogen. Okay, conversion of glucose to glycogen is glycogenesis. Glycogen to glucose, glycogenolysis. Okay, next it also controls the amino acid levels. Okay, so that whatever these extra amino acids are there, they will be deaminated. Okay, urea will be produced, some sugars can be produced, urea will be eliminated, and sugar will be utilized by the body. It is also interesting to know that the fetal RBCs are produced by the liver. Later on, as a person becomes an adult, the RBCs are produced by the bone marrow. Bone marrow. Okay, bone marrow produces the RBC in the adult, and in the fetal, that is unborn fetal, what is happening? The RBC is produced by the liver. Also, the liver stores the iron, copper, and several vitamins like vitamin A and D. Okay, so liver is an excellent source of the iron, copper, vitamin A, vitamin D. It also does the detoxification of various drugs, that is we take medicines, the medicines also need to be detoxified, okay, and secreted out of the body. Okay, also alcohol consumption, that is also detoxified by the liver. Okay, the production of fibrinogen, prothrombin, that is important for the blood clotting, the production of heparin, the production of heat due to cellular metabolism, the regulation of blood volume, excretion of toxic and metabolic poisonous substances, the destruction of RBC, all of these kind of various metabolic processes are performed by the liver. That is why liver is known as the metabolic center of the body. Okay, so in this way we have seen some important aspects of the assimilation of the food, how the liver is extremely important for the various metabolic activities. We have seen about the large intestine. We can recapitulate a very important part, that is the enzymes that are secreted by the various parts of the alimentary canal. Okay, in the mouth, what enzymes are secreted? In the mouth, the saliva is secreted by the salivary glands. So the enzyme is ptyalin, okay, known as the salivary amylase. So this salivary amylase is going to convert starch into maltose. Okay, maltose is nothing but glucose plus glucose. Okay, that is in the saliva. Esophagus, it doesn't produce any enzymes. Stomach, it produces two important enzymes that are part of this gastric juice. Okay, that is the pepsin and renin. Okay, both of these are proteases, that is they break down the proteins. Okay, peptin will break down the protein into peptides. Renin will break down the milk protein, that is the casein. into paracasein, which is the broken down product of the milk protein casein. Okay, and you already know that in the stomach it is a highly acidic pH. Then next comes the small intestine. In small intestine there are the three sections: duodenum, ileum and jejunum. Duodenum is having two important juices. One is the bile juice, another is a pancreatic juice. Okay, the bile juice is mainly required for the emulsification of the fats, and the pancreatic juice is doing the most of the enzymatic things it is having, that is having the amylopsin. Okay, which is nothing but pancreatic amylase itself converting starch into maltose. Then trypsin is going to convert the proteins into peptides. Then stepsin, which is going to convert the emulsified fats into fatty acids and glycerol. Okay, ileum. Ileum is also having various enzymes. Okay, this is the main in the between part. It is having the erepsin, okay, which is a peptidase. Then maltase. So whatever we are seeing this maltose, breakdown of starch to maltose, that maltose need to be further broken down into glucose. That is going to take place by maltase. Okay, then sucrase, which is going to convert the sucrose into glucose and fructose. Okay, sucrose. Okay, then lactase, it is going to convert the lactose sugar that is present in the milk into glucose plus galactose. This is important. Okay, and then we have the intestinal lipases. These lipases are going to convert the fats into fatty acids and glycerol. Okay, after the assimilation has taken place in the small intestine, then the food has to enter into the large intestine. In the large intestine there is a colon and a rectum. In the colon there are no enzymes, in the rectum there are no enzymes. Okay, in the colon there is absorption of water and some of the remaining undigested food, and the rectum is only for the temporary storage of the undigested food. So in this way there are the various vital enzymes which are doing their activity at very specific sections of the human alimentary canal. Okay, this is important. So in our next class we will look into the various experiments on digestion and what are the kind of practical work that can be done on food tests. Thank you.